What am I trying to say? I mean, there was a number of other TNS broadcasters that we had a discussion off to the side, which was much like this. I'm trying to answer to a model of what we need to do to really, truly serve ourselves. I'm saying protest, but protest for solution. Here, what's going to happen is while we get agreement after agreement after agreement, we're still going to precipitate into division. Why? And who is this person who would write all of a sudden articles about purportedly about monetary solution, and that in particular that that a resource-based economy would serve us. So anyway, Jake goes on, get as many as possible to sign the mandate for mathematically perfected economy. A critical mass will force the banks out, and it will make people understand the true powers that are exploiting us. How are we ever going to accomplish anything if we don't do that? He's absolutely right. Protest against the fact that our money is being issued by private banks at interest, and that we want to take back the control over the issuance of our money. Okay? But this guy is going to agree with this and then going to advocate that it has to be resource-based. And as we'll see, he can't even explain how or why. So what he's going to do is he's going to take this whole movement that he's collected, supposedly about freedom, and he's going to deny me my freedom as I'm going to explain to him. And he's going to deny everyone else their freedom as I'm going to explain to him. So he goes on agreeing, and then he says, that he doesn't really understand mathematically perfected economy. Jake says, how many people are expected to show up? And this person who's organizing this ostensibly, he says, I have no idea. It's not that many on this group yet, but the word can spread quickly when something is about to happen. But what exactly is about to happen? Are we actually protesting against the banks to do something else which isn't solution? Why? Did he have to pretend that he authored solutions so we have a controversy here? To what effect? And why can't we invalidate what he's about to propose? Anyway, because time's running short here, I'm going to try and get to this quickly. So he claims he doesn't understand, and this is on Facebook. World Freedom Demo, that's a group. So he finds a post about mathematically perfected economy, which has already been explained to him. He claims he's already read it, doesn't understand a thing. But it isn't that he can't understand. It's I'm sorry, and this is going to offend some people, but in every case, people who don't understand just never, ever gave quality attention to the material. It's explained perfectly, exactly, without error. In 43 years, nobody has ever pointed out where I've been in error. And I mean, you might have somebody like, my, interview last week, you might claim so, but, and interrupt me even before I can even answer otherwise, but I'll get it in there. And the truth is, you decide, is there a fault in the explanation? Is there some other, more appropriate words? In truth, that's not so. We have to rise to the occasion. So, let's see. So he looks at this page, and then this is the leader of this group, and he replies, okay, as I understand it, it will simply be a public bank owned by the people, creating the currency we need and giving out loans without interest. That's it. That's it. Well, it's pretty damn simple, but there's at least one other vital thing, and that's an obligatory schedule of payment. But I have so many imitators who are claiming they're doing a public bank or a lawful bank and, all this crap, who can't even explain the issues we're dealing with either. Excuse me. You can't leave out the obligatory schedule of payment because then you can't solve inflation and deflation. You can't have an immutable currency. Therefore, you can't even have a just currency. So, excuse me, it's entirely undiligent to so carelessly summarize all this. It really is. You can't understand that it requires an obligatory schedule of payment. Of course we can. He's never even paid the issue that much attention. So he goes on to say, so if we should have a bank slogan, it should be make all banks public and interest free. Well, that's just not quite it, And so Jake says, I wouldn't use the term banks, and that's one thing that I've advocated, and Jake is respecting what I've taught, And he replies back, and this kind of banking will definitely change the world. No interest in currency created out of the need in the population instead of greedy bankers collecting all the money and interest. Well, that's a basic understanding. In truth, you have to understand that, we have an obligation to pay out of a circulation comprised of some principal, all the principal and interest that's ever owed, which interest borrowed back increases the sum of debt. So in the end of paying off a debt, quote unquote, we owe that much plus all the interest on it. You see, this is a huge thing. It's very simple for me to say this. It's not challenging. The idea is not intellectually challenging. Once you get it, it's like smacking you in the face. It's the math. It's the only math. Anyone who talks about anything else, like this officer of the Bank of England here, is full of crap. So here, all this is going to turn around, though he's agreeing with these principles, all of a sudden, somehow, a resource-based economy is going to save us. So I'm asked at this point, and I'm going to skip through some of this. I'm asked at this point to join in. So I jump in. And in mathematically perfected economy, we basically run the economy. There isn't any exterior management. In other words, we decide no more than how we want to certify creditworthiness and depreciate classes of property. What is destructive about the present system is its obfuscation of our promissory obligations to each other. This obfuscation falsifies debts to the banking system. So here I am explaining to this man yet again exactly what it is, and in the end summarizing this. Under mathematically perfected economy then, a $100,000 home with a 100-year lifespan costs us only $1,000 per year, or $83.33 a month. Now who's perfectly capable of validating the math that amounts to this would ever jump to some other idea, a purported resource-based economy, which you can't even explain how it would solve the same issues, but yet offers it as if it's some higher thing, just somehow. You see, this is how we divide. Here I've proven mathematically perfected economy again, and what's going to happen? The guy's immediately going to jump over to something else. So this goes on, and I explain, how I, provided the Reagan administration with these computer models, and all they do is emulate or replicate this process of irreversible multiplication of artificial indebtedness. And I'm sorry, if you don't understand that, you don't understand how this banking system is destructive. So what's his answer? Hi, Mike. Phew, man. You really know how to explain stuff in the most complicated manner. No offense, he says. I understand you and totally agree, of course, just to repeat my words. Well, okay, great. What we'd like to do is not divide, If you really truly understand it, how is it that you're going to advocate a resource-based economy as a solution, which he's about to do, So he says the resource-based economy, though, is taking it one step further. What step? I'm no idiot. Explain to me what that step is. Don't just claim you're taking it a step further when you don't even know. I mean, the umpteen jillion details that I've answered to over 43 years, and this guy's just stepping into this all of a sudden says he's taking it one step further. How so? I'm no fool. Explain it to me. Abandoning money and property, sharing the world's resources, and building this planet together to the best planet in the universe. Utopia? Maybe, but it's worth a dream. No, you've destroyed the dream by invalidating the only solution, the only thing by which we can receive just reward for our contribution to production. So Jake says you're pretending to reform the world with your world freedom demo, but the truth of the matter is that it has not yet made yourself fit to discuss, or evidently even to perceive, solution. For obviously, if inflation and deflation are defined respectively as increases or decreases in circulation, so he goes on to perfectly cite, proofs of mathematically perfected economy. And yet, this man answers then, Jake, I have no trouble understanding this. Truth is, though, how does he? Because in the end, he's going to come right back and he's going to claim that a resource-based economy is a better solution without demonstrating how. Just giving these lofty claims that it's utopian, that it takes it a step further. What step further? What step further? See, this is the thing that if we do this, why even start? If everyone's got a different idea, it doesn't even have to be justified or qualified to the rest of us. Excuse me, we don't even have accountability amongst each other. How are we to ask it of anyone else then? So I say, no, Harold, you know where this idea that interest is not created comes from? He just cites Ellen Hodgson Brown. From plagiarists of my work, but it isn't the issue that the interest isn't created, So I explained to him that if you created the interest, that wouldn't solve the problems. And yet he goes on pretending to understand and yet immediately deviating away again. So there's many, many answers that I'm providing here. I'm going to say, I'm going to read one. Ellen can't even articulate the problem, but where are we going if we can't either? I say, any disciplined person has a problem with people who just say their explanations of the bare relevant facts are too complicated. When we are introduced an idea with such gravity and implications, it is those properties which so interest us in the idea that we listen as carefully once to the careful explanation which matters. We've gone over this for how long now? Instead against resistance. Oh, it's so complicated. No, it isn't complicated, Harold. But when you close your eyes and ears right out of the gate because you don't want to deal with anything purportedly complicated, you end up grasping anything only because you refused to make the first few mere efforts which understanding cannot be had without. Now, I want to find here, he's tried to say there's hardly any difference between mathematically perfected economy, but the hardly any differences are huge differences. You don't divorce yourself from the nuances without even understanding what the ramifications are. What kind of person is just tearing everything apart without even a reason to do so? Without even first doing the work to understand, by God, all that makes perfect sense. Indeed, it accounts for every question that I can ask of it. He hasn't even asked the questions. He's just divorcing himself. He's just deviating from it, okay? So I said you have two choices. Your banners can read, please create the interest. Or your banners can read, people for mathematically perfected economy. Rectify the obfuscation of our currency now. So he complains, yes, where are we going, Mike? And he claims, that some of these other ideas are not his ideas. Well, of course they're not. But are the authors of them credible either? And he says he cares. But what are you doing if you care and you divorce yourself from solution as soon as you heard about it without ever once even bothering to understand it? Evaluate whether it's a solution for inflation and deflation. And what else could possibly do it then? Realize yourself by your own examination that indeed there is no way that deviating from an iota from solution could possibly